つでも言ってくださいね。愛を広げてあげますから。私の気持ち受け取ってください。あなたのための贈り物です。愛を込めて打ちます。どんなお悩みでもちゃんとお聞きしますよ。これが私の本心です。諦めないでください。私の愛分けてあげます。いつでも行ける。これでいいかしら。いつでもどんなお悩みでもちゃんとお聞きしますよ。はあ、行くわ。愛を広あなたのための贈り物です。愛を込めて愛の私の気持ち受け取ってください。待機中全てをかけて諦めないでください。私の愛分けてあげます。
裏顔運を試してみよう。
私の気持ち受け取ってください。愛を広あなたのための贈り物です。いつでも言ってどんなお悩みでもちゃんとお聞きしますよ。はあ、落ち着いて、集中。愛のいやえいせい。はあ、愛の力。これも私の気持ち私の気持ち私の気持ち私の気持ち私の気持ち愛を込めてえいせい。はあ、愛の力で。
Hey guys, Misery here, back with another CZN video. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the new unit Diana and her kit and everything she's about. So off of first glance, she is basically Renoa 2.0. She is very similar to Renoa. She has a ton of bullet cards and her main gimmick is discarding. So she's going to be really good with units like Nia, who discards a lot. So shown up on the screen right now should be an infographic of like her basic mechanics. So most of her cards have this new buff and tag called Quietus. So Quietus basically it activates the card when you discard that card. And then we also have another new debuff called Resonance that is applied to the enemy. And when you discard a card, it is an 80% extra attack and then the stack of Resonance gets decreased. But it's a debuff that is applied to the enemy. This is not a buff on the card. And then we also have another new buff called Flutters. From what I know, this is locked behind her E2, so I don't think you can get this with E1 or E0. But basically what Flutters does is that at the end of the turn, 200% extra attack to the target with the highest max HP and increase damage amount of the extra attack by 10% for each flutter, max 20 stacks. So that is going up to 200% extra attack damage amount if you have max flutter stacks at E2. But later on we'll discuss the ego manifestations, and the max stacks for flutters actually goes up to 30 once you get her to E6. And then also at the start of the turn it decreases all the flutters. So moving on to the next infographic of her basic like strategies and how you want to play her. So you want to create hard bullets without consuming cost through Quietus. And then next we also want to apply the resonance debuff that we talked about earlier without consuming cost through Quietus also. So basically you discard a Quietus card because as we know the Quietus tag it activates the card when discarded, and then you create attack and bullet cards. So each time the discard effect is activated you'll be inflicting a ton of resonance debuff, and then you'll be triggering the resonance debuffs for extra damage and attacks. But yeah, units who have bullet cards like Luke or Noah are gonna synergize well with Diana. And then like I said earlier, units that can discard like Nia, because Diana's whole main gimmick is her discarding, activating that Quietus on the cards and then applying resonance debuffs for more damage. And then moving on to her cards, first off we have her three basic cards, Disruption Fire and Protect Me. Through potentials you can actually upgrade Disruption Fire to randomly discard a random card in your hand. So that is not just 100% damage. Without the potential it is, but with the potential it will randomly discard one random card in hand. And then I'm pretty sure Protect Me just stays the same, so you'll always want to get rid of Protect Me. Maybe you want to keep Disruption Fire for discarding cards, but honestly we'll probably be removing Disruption Fire also. And then starting off with the first Epiphany card with All My Heart. So as you guys see, this has the Quietus tag and 100% damage, create 2 Heartbreakers. So I'm just going to be going over the base Epiphany. There will be a screenshot of all of the Epiphanies on screen just so you guys know like all the Epiphanies and if you want to start theory crafting before she comes out. But yeah, with All My Heart it has the Quietus tag, meaning we want to discard this so it activates, and then it creates 2 Heartbreakers. So Diana's whole whole kit, like, she discards, but she also creates these heart breakers and heart shakers, which the shakers and breakers are basically kind of like bullet cards. If you play someone like Luke or Renoa, you know they generate a ton of bullet cards, or even like Serennial, like she generates a ton of lasers. This is basically Diana's whole main gimmick. She creates a bunch of these breakers and shakers. So yeah, that first card, kind of self-explanatory. On to the next card, Khmer, Milk, and Pong. This is also going to create 2 heart shakers, but yeah, the Milk and Pong card just creates 2 heart shakers. And then onto the Pistol of Purification. This has the bullet tag and quietus tag. Like we said with All My Heart, want to be discarding this so it activates, but this card basically 120% damage, 2 resonance, the resonance debuffs we were talking about earlier, that gives extra attack damage. And then the next text on the pistol, if this card is discarded, activate resonance inflicted on the target by this unit 3 more times. So not only are you going to be activating resonance just by discarding this card alone or other cards, but this specific pistol is also going to be activating resonance more. And yeah, that is Pistol of Purification. Onto the next card called Blooming Love. Draw 1 quietus cards and discard 2. So something they stated in the stream, that this draws before it discards. You'll draw 1 and then you have the option to discard the card you just drew. So you have the option to discard after you draw the card. So just that you're not discarding before you draw. So that is a nice feature on the way it works. And then onto the next card called Liberated Feelings. Draw 2 exhaust bullet cards, 300% damage, and increase damage amount by 30% for each different bullet card in hand. So someone like Luke with a bunch of bullet cards, this is going to, you know, ramp up that damage on this Liberated Feelings card a ton, but you also are going to be drawing more exhaust bullet cards if you have some in the draw pile. And yeah, those are basically all of her cards, basically kind of like her main gimmick and little rundown on what you need to know on how she works. Moving on to the ego skill. So her ego skill is called Radiant Smile. It costs 5. As you guys see in the top left, those 5 light blue bars, that means it costs 5 ego points. But what this ego skill does is that it creates 1 Cupid shot, which is something entirely new in her kit that we have not talked about yet. And then it also creates 2 heart bullets, like the heart breakers and heart shakers, like I was mentioning earlier. But shown up on the screen will be a picture of what Cupid shot does. So basically, Cupid shot, it has the bullet tag and quietus, just like that pistol card we were talking about before. It does 120% damage and 60% extra attack to a random enemy for each bullet card in hand. So ideally, you want to use this when you have a bunch of bullet cards in hand, whether it be from Diana, Luke, Renoa, Lucas, just any bullet card with the bullet tag. And yeah, that is her ego skill. It does change a little at E3, but we'll talk about that later on when we get to the ego manifestations. And then onto her potentials, starting off with the first major node, adds the following effect to the Disruption Fire card. Discard 1 random card of this unit. So like I was talking about before with those basics, they get upgraded and they discard 1 random card of Diana when you unlock this potential. So it makes the basic cards have more value and potential usable, but like I said before, I don't really think we're gonna be using Disruption of Fire, but who knows. And then onto her last 2 major potential nodes, if Diana's critical chance is greater than 10% plus 4% additional damage amount, and then for every 5% critical chance above 10%, add an additional plus 1% to the modifier. So 10% is a pretty easy threshold to reach for critical chance. Everyone should be hitting this, especially since she is a DPS and she has the nodes leading up to the major nodes with critical chance and critical damage. And then her last major node, plus 5% damage amount to Diana's Disruption of Fire. That is her basic card that we were just talking about that just got upgraded with the other potential. And then if Diana's critical chance is greater than 20%, add an additional 5% to the modifier. So this one's probably not going to be too important if we're removing Disruption of Fire. So yeah. And then onto the manifest egos, starting off with the E1 plus 100% damage amount to the Liberated Feelings card, and changes the draw count of exhaust bullet cards to 3. So Liberated Feelings is her 2-cost card that can't get an epiphany. This is the card that originally draws 2 exhaust bullet cards from the draw pile and then increases damage amount for each different bullet card you have in hand. So that is getting bumped up from 2 to 3 and getting plus 100% damage amount added to the card. And then onto her manifest ego 2, like I was talking about earlier, this is the way you get the flutters buff. So each time an ally discards a card, you gain 2 flutters, and flutters at the end of the turn, 200% extra attack to the target with the highest max HP, and you get increased damage amount of the extra attack by 10% for each flutters. Then at the start of the turn, it decreases all the flutters. And this has a max stack of 20, so that's 200% extra attack damage buff just from the flutters alone. And then moving on to the E3, change cost of Radiant Smile to 4 and the creation count of heart bullets to 4 cards. So basically what this does, shown up on the screen right now, is going to be her ego skill with the E3. As you see in the top left of the light blue bars, there's only 4 now instead of 5, so it's 4 ego points instead of 5. And then instead of creating just 2 bullet cards, it gets bumped up to 4, so reducing it by 1 ego skill and adding 2 extra bullet cards. And then onto her manifest ego 4, plus 30% damage amount to Diana's extra attacks, plus 1% damage amount to Diana's extra attacks for each flutters that Diana owns. So with her E2, that is 20 flutters, so that is 20% extra damage amount on top of the 30%, making it a total of 50% damage amount to Diana's extra attacks. And then we just skip E5 because that's throwaway dupe, doesn't really matter. But onto her E6, so this increases the flutter stacks to 30. So if you have her E6, that E4 is gonna go from 50% damage amount to extra attacks to 60% damage amount to extra attacks, because you're getting 10 more flutters with this E6. But basically what her E6 does is that each time an ally discards a card, you gain an additional 2 flutters and increase the max stack count of flutters by 10. So I'm pretty sure you get 4 flutters each time you discard now, because you have the base 2 from E2 and then you have 2 more from E6. Each time Diana's flutter stacks to 30, an ally inflicts 200% extra damage to a random enemy 1 time per turn. So that is just 1 time per turn, it's not anything busted. But yeah, that is her E6. That is all of her ego manifestations, basically everything you need to know about her dupes. Finally, moving on to the recommended team compositions. So like I said before, you ideally want to pair Diana with units like Renoa that have bullets, or Lucas or Luke that also have bullets, or units that can discard like Nia. But these are the teams that the official CZN team recommends to use for Diana. So first we have Diana, Renoa, and Nia. Second we have Diana, Veronica, and Cassius. Third we have Diana, Hugo, and Typhera, which is interesting. And then fourth we have Diana, Lucas, and Mika. As you see on the side of the screen, it shows, you know, what the team composition is for. Like the first one, chain dirge bullets with discard cards, increase card flow, and provide discard support. You guys can read the other 3 if you are really interested. But yeah, those are the team compositions and what the official CZN team recommends for Diana. And then moving on to her partner, she is called Sophia. So basically what Sophia does is she has a passive called Milky Way Chorus. This increases the assigned combat's attack by 16 to 24% depending on, you know, what dupe you have of Sophia. Dupe 0 is going to be 16% and max dupe is going to be 24%. And then when a Passion Quietus card of the assigned combatant is discarded, get plus 5 to 10% critical damage with a max of 4 stacks. So if you have her dupe 0, this is plus 20% critical damage. Max dupe is plus 40%. And then when 3 bullet cards are discarded, the assigned combatant performs a 200 to 400% extra attack on a random enemy, and this has a cap of 2 times per turn. So yeah, those are her passives. They sound pretty good for, you know, DPS Diana. Moving on to the ego skill of the partner called Always Cheer For You, EP3. So basically the ego skill gives 3 diehard fan to the assigned combatant. It also draws 1, and you can discard up to 2 cards in hand. So that is a lot of utility right there. But basically diehard fan is a new buff. I'm pretty sure it's a buff. It's either a buff or a debuff. I'm not completely sure, but from the way they are wording things, it sounds like a buff. So basically what diehard fan does is that plus 40% damage amount to extra attacks of the assigned combatant, and at the end of the turn it decreases diehard fan by 1. So this is a 3-turn buff since you get 3 of them, and it decreases at the end of the turn, not on hit. So you can do like 10 hits in 1 turn with 1 diehard fan, and at the end of the turn it'll just decrease by 1, which is really good. And yeah, that is her partner. Her partner really isn't universal. It's specifically made for her. So, you know, if you love Diana, then you can pull it. But in terms of value, it is not that good because, you know, you want to invest in partners that can be used universally on multiple different units. Like when we had Serenio's banner and Pekko's banner, Pekko is basically usable on any hunter, which is really good. But, you know, something like Sophia right here, you know, it's only usable on Diana. So it loses a lot of value just being unit specific. And yeah, I think that's kind of like everything you need to know about the new unit Diana. I hope this video was informative. If it was, I'd very much appreciate if you could support the channel, you know, like, comment, subscribe, anything. It really all helps a ton. We are super close to my next milestone of 3K subscribers. We are like roughly 250 subs away, and I know we definitely can hit it by the end of this month. So if you're not subscribed already, I'd very much appreciate it. And to everyone who already is subscribed and shows support, I appreciate you guys very much. But yeah, let me know in the comments what video you want to see next. If you have any suggestions, or if you want me to do a specific video, I'll take it into consideration for my next video. But my personal thoughts on Diana, she looks very, very fun. Very similar to Renoa, basically Renoa 2.0. I've been wanting to learn Renoa, but the problem is that you kind of like need to build Nia for Renoa, and I kind of have a feeling that you're also going to need to build Nia for Diana, and Nia kind of seems confusing for me, you know, which is like why I really haven't learned to play her, and you know, that's holding me back from making that step of learning Renoa. But who knows, maybe Diana will be, you know, playable without Nia. I hope so. But yeah, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys take care, peace, and be safe until the next one.